Without further ado, let me introduce Njema. Njema is the Acting Assistant Deputy Administrator for Strategic Partnership Programs now in the National Nuclear Security Administration's Office of Defense Programs. Dr. Fraser's program assures that strategic interactions with other federal agencies, private industry, academia, that's a key one, and foreign entities are established, maintained, and conducted in the best interest of the NNSA and the mission. She joined the agency in 2001 and has since managed and led a number of NNSA's flagship scientific and technical programs, including serving as director of the Office of Experimental Science's $1.38 billion Weapons Science R&D program. A longtime science trailblazer, Dr. Fraser was the first African-American woman to graduate with a bachelor's degree from Carnegie Mellon University in physics from the Carnegie Mellon University, and the first degree to receive a PhD in theoretical nuclear physics from Michigan State University. Dr. Fraser is the co-founder of DOE Power, which is an acronym for Professional Opportunities for Women at Energy Realized, and is recognized as a champion of STEM and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in education and the workforce. She serves as the NNSA representative for the DOE Task Force on Equity R&D Working Group. So without further ado, Dr. Fraser, I'll turn it over to you.
It is really a pleasure to be here. It's great to see so many new faces as well as familiar faces. So basically everybody over the age of 40 in this room, I know, because I've been with NNSA since 2001 and apparently cannot quit you. So I am here to talk a little bit about the enterprise, which you're all a part of, right? You are all kind of cogs in this engine that is nuclear and national security. And so I want to talk a little bit about where we lie within NNSA, our leadership, what we feel we need to do to make sure that we maintain the expertise, right, that we need for our nuclear deterrent, to support our nation, our allies, all of that stuff. So I'll go through some of that and not assume you know it. If you do know it, sing along. And we'll get to how academic programs kind of folds into all of this, all right? And hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. Please ask me many, many questions. I'll try not to do the Washington, kind of Wonder Woman wrist deflect thing. Okay, so here we go. So NNSA leadership. So obviously this is not all of the leadership, but this is kind of a ladder down into how we get to academic programs. So want to make sure that you are familiar with all of the folks that you see here. All right, so I will talk a little bit about NNSA, the leadership, and kind of where everybody fits into the picture. So you are here, right? So one of the undersecretaries is the Undersecretary for Nuclear Security. So we partner with the Office of Science, we partner with the other offices, but really it's a drill down into the kind of S4 Undersecretary and what we do for nuclear security. I know it's hard to see, but I think you guys will get these slides or they'll be on the web or something. So, and then within that is defense programs. So many people know Secretary Granholm, and they'll know her from Michigan, right? From when she was governor in Michigan. She's been doing a wonderful job. A few key things to note is that she was one of the first kind of Senate confirmations, right? So she's been around for a while. She has a very clear idea for what she wants to do. She's very active in social media. She really wants to get the word out to the public about all the great things that happen in DOE, and that includes the great things that happen in NNSA. And so we're really fortunate to have her be so savvy about how to communicate these messages so that the general public is aware of what we're doing within the agency. So she manages a juggernaut within the federal program, right? So almost $50 billion. So this number has been going up steadily. There are a lot of big things that the Secretary would like to do. And you can see a big part of that is what NNSA needs to do for the country. And so we are in the middle of we're running about 3 different budgets, and that's a whole nother talk. So hopefully you guys have some idea about that FY 22, 23, and 24 process. If not, I'm sure any of the lab folks, hey Brad, or myself would be happy to regale you with how that process works and kind of the surprises and twists and turns of the process from beginning to end. Next, we have the administrator, Jill Ruby. And so for the folks particularly who have been at or been engaged with Sandia, you've known her for a long time. She was also on our Defense Programs Advisory Committee, which is a FACA committee, Federal Advisory Committee Act Committee. We love our acronyms. We love our acronyms. So she's really familiar with NNSA, with the complex, with the laboratories, with the federal government, with private sector, and it's been great having her lead NNSA and really have such a clear idea for where she wants to take the organization. Again, an early confirmation. Defense programs, NNSA, and nuclear nonproliferation are Senate confirmed because of the expertise that they have. Other kind of senior level people within the administration with the department aren't necessarily confirmed, but it's kind of a testament to what she's being required to do in a very tough climate, to know that she has the vote of confidence of the leadership of the nation. All right, we talked a little bit about her budget, and within that, weapons activities is where academic programs sit. So it's a little dated. We won't be getting into FY23 numbers at all, but just so you kind of know what the total looked like for the last year, just gives you kind of an idea of scale and scope. All right, can you guys see that? I can't tell if it's blurry or not. What's important to know about this? All the things with the colors, that's weapons activities, so it's a lot. The stuff without it, nuclear nonproliferation, federal salaries and expenses, is a different bucket. And then academic programs is this bright red 1%, right? So when you think about, you've got your nuclear warheads, you've got nuclear nonproliferation, you've got counterproliferation, you have cleanup, environmental management. You have a lot of things that have to get done, but we know that it can't get done without the people, without the brains, without the expertise, right? And so we make sure that we preserve that and use that to the best of our ability. All right, so in May of 2022, a new strategic vision came out for NNSA. So if you go to the website, you can see it, but it is guiding a lot of what we are doing right now to make sure that we're in alignment with the top vision within the agency. So you can see our mission here: to protect the nation, our allies, and our partners by providing resilient and responsive nuclear security enterprise. I missed an article. And so that's in line with what we're talking about this morning. Our vision, right? You can all see yourselves within this vision, right? Being able to do this and deliver timely, innovative solutions. And that can only be done with new ideas and old ideas thought about in new ways, right? And that's the name of the game. All right, some of the mission priorities you can see here. Obviously, getting into the nuclear stockpile, global security, nuclear propulsion, we talked about that, and then emerging challenges. And I think the emerging challenges is really where there's a new bent in understanding how we contribute to challenges that have been with us over the years. So if we think about the challenges that we're making headway on now, these are decadal. These are over the lifetime of people's challenges, right? If we think about the shot that happened at NIF, right? This is over people's lifetimes that we're trying to address these challenges. And there are ones on the horizon, right? And so we need people that have the expertise, that have the will, that have an affinity for the mission and for the service to be a part of that. And then you see some of the kind of mission enablers belowhand, And you can see how well academic programs and the graduate fellowships align to what we need to do there in ST&E, right? Workforce, infrastructure, and then an integrated enterprise. So now let's get to what the nuclear security enterprise is. So a lot of times we think of it as just the labs, plants, and sites. It is definitely that, right? But it's also the stuff that you saw in the mission enablers. It's the stuff you saw in the strategic vision and mission, right? So it's the people, it's the infrastructure, right? It's the ideas. It's all of that that makes up the nuclear security enterprise. Without the people, without the capabilities, without the infrastructure, without the investment, the long-term investment, none of this can happen. So it's the buildings, but it's what's inside the buildings, right? It's what's intangible about what we need in science and technology and engineering. It's all of that that makes up the nuclear security enterprise. It's our partnerships. It's our partnerships with DOD. It's our partnerships with NASA. It's our partnerships with industry. It's our partnerships amongst each other with the centers, right, and with different grants, with different opportunities, with faculty fellowships that hopefully I'll get to talk more about with folks while I'm here in Santa Fe. And so it's all of that. So it's a little more expansive than what we traditionally think about when we think about the enterprise, and that is its footprint, where it is, right? It really is a global enterprise that takes thousands and thousands of people to make happen. All right, so diving down in what I would call kind of the nuclear stockpile or stockpile stewardship area, we have Marv Adams. So Marv was recently confirmed in April, but he has a long history with NNSA, with the stockpile stewardship program, with academia, right? So it's a nice confluence of backgrounds and experience that Marv brings to the table, and it's great to be underneath his leadership. He has been very interested in what we're doing in academic programs, how we might want to change things, me bringing to him some things. So some of these programs have been around since 1996, 1998 type of thing. What do we need to change? How do we need to grow? What's starting to fray around the edges? And these are the conversations we're having to make sure that we're doing the best by you and the classes that come after you to make sure that you have the research experience you need, that you have the tools and capabilities that you need, that you're interested in coming to NNSA, that even if you're not interested in coming to NNSA, but you want to do something else in industry or academia or another government agency, that you are part of a peer community that understands the research and has been trained in such a way that you might, contribute in peer review, right? In collaboration on papers. So there are all of those options that really lead us to want to make sure that we have the strongest program possible. And Marv has been a big proponent of that already, and even before he took the position. So a little bit about his organization. So this is where you get to see the assistant deputy administrators, other than myself, standing in front of you today. So we have a principal assistant deputy administrator for stockpile sustainment and one for enterprise capability. So that's fairly recent, I'd say in the last couple of years or so. That's something that Charlie Verdon put into place when he was the DADP, when he was at the top of this chart. And we've decided to keep it because there are a lot of things where we need integration, we need communication, and we will need to make sure that we don't have the managerial stovepipes that are keeping us from being as effective and efficient as we want to be. And so you have stockpile management, think life extension programs, secure transportation, systems engineering and integration. And then under enterprise capabilities, you have research, development, test, and evaluation, and you have production modernization. Now, for the folks that have been involved for a while, you'll recognize that academic programs used to be in RDT&E. And we've switched it over to be kind of higher level, keeps going up. It was in 113, then it went to 11, organizational speak, and now it's in 10.1. And hopefully that communicates to you our commitment to these programs and our commitment to making sure that they are a permanent and secure wedge within our organization. So now it lies in 10.1, and then lastly we have our international programs in 10.2. So that just gives you an idea of how we're structured. And so I think I've drilled all the way down from the Secretariat S1 down to where my program sits. Let's see where we go next. All right, so talking about the science, okay, and how it contributes. So I tried to put along the top kind of the non-science language, and then some bullets that kind of pull out for you where the science comes in. And that is everywhere, right? The science, the computational science, the material science, the high energy density physics, the metallurgy, the engineering, all of that contributes to how we're able to have the enduring stockpile, our life extension programs and modernization programs, knowledge base and infrastructure, and then broad national security mission. So for a lot of these things, we are the, if not only, at least first in class of what we have in terms of computational and experimental facilities, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. And so how can those capabilities be used for broader missions? How do we play when there are conflicts, globally, between nations, between countries, and we're seeing that now? How do we play when we want to have a public-private partnership, right, with industries that are in line with what we'd like to do? How do we play when we want to ensure that there's a technology out there that we know we're going to need? So that's where the broader security mission comes in, and that's a little bit why we decided to expand, these partnerships that are in the interest of NNSA and the nation to include academia, and why it was such a natural fit to come to 10.1 for partnerships. All right, this is a little about me. Ralph mentioned all this, so I won't belabor it. Anything I want to add? No, not really. He covered all of this. So I've been with NNSA for a very long time, and it has really been an oddly growth experience over 2 decades, which seems odd to say, but there has been enough mobility, challenge, openness to change that it's allowed me to still grow in my various roles within NNSA, and hopefully that continues. All right. So we talked a little bit already about work conducted and partnerships engaged in the interest of the nation. So what does that mean for academic programs? So these are 6 areas that I think we at NNSA have a commitment to ensuring stay strong, stay vibrant, and you are the backbone of how we do that, right? You guys in the fellowships, the folks that are in the centers, the grant recipients, all of those students, the faculty that support them, the laboratories that engage with them are all part of that. And that is making sure that the science stays strong first. I think a lot of times we talk about workforce, which is key, right? And that's why we talk about it all the time. But you guys are really such a part of advancing the science, staying at the forefront of science, challenging the boundaries of science, getting that new knowledge, right? So the science really is the key part. So the research, advancing the science is always first. Then there's the innovation, and I talked to this already, right? New ideas, old ideas thought about in new ways. Gotta have that, and that means you getting new people into the room to be part of the discussion. Training, really understanding how to use, no two facilities are alike, right? If you're able to do a tabletop experiment, that doesn't mean you can, necessarily translate all of that over to Omega or to NIF or to DART or any of the facilities that you saw, yesterday or in your past histories in the program. But how do we train, right, to understand how to use a diagnostic, right? How to do the analysis, how to run the code, how to set up the code. All of those types of things are just critical to maintaining the ability to really capitalize on the science that is received. Pipeline, that's an area that we are paying more attention to now because it's a different world, right? It's a post-COVID world. Well, it's not post-COVID, as you can see from my lozenges. But it's a world that has COVID-19, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate that, honestly, right? So I think you've all seen the YouTube, videos about the Great Resignation, right? And just the way that work happens is changing, right? A lot more telework, a lot more hybrid working environments, right? A lot more virtual and cloud work happening, right? So really making sure that we have the strongest pipeline for the world we're living in now. Peer review, we talked about that, making sure that we have people both internal to the complex and external to the complex to critique, to challenge, right? That's the scientific environment you want to be in. You want to be able to prove out what you're saying and have thought of all the ways you could be wrong, right? And we don't want to lose that aspect of science. And then last, inclusion. So this is something that we didn't have at the forefront. We've always had MSIP and TEP. So MSIP is Minority Serving Institution Partnership Programs, and TEP now is Tribal Education Partnership Program. So that all was rolled up into one. It's been disaggregated a little bit to make sure that the interests of both of those communities are being well met. And so that's something that we want to do. But inclusion doesn't just mean the minority serving institutions. It also means tier 2 and tier 3 universities we may not be getting to. It means community colleges and trade schools we may not be getting to. It means people who may not have a strong department, right, but are brilliant in their own right and have something that they can contribute. So how do we include those people, right? We have fellowships for students. How do we expand that out? Are there other people we need to give fellowships to? Do we need to do faculty fellowships? Do we need to do more in terms of institutional support, right? So inclusion has a very broad kind of underlying theme to it, and we're growing into how we think about this thing, so, and how we evolve the program. So maintaining scientific leadership. So I talked about those 6 tenets, so let's talk about the research and the researchers. Just wanted to make sure that we threw this up, and I thank my staff for making sure that we had all the right and most up-to-date information. If you guys know how we roll on grants.gov, this is a highly fluctuating, highly active, highly changeable environment. But this is where we stand currently with our fellowships. In addition to you guys, we also have the Computational Science Graduate Fellowship, Centers of Excellence for Predictive Science Academic Alliance Program are shown here. Our SSAA, Stewardship Science Academic Alliance Program, I feel like I'm quizzing myself, are shown here. We have new grants that come out through various programs. And then this speaks to what we talked about in terms of both the pipeline and the workforce, but also the peer review. So of the alums, we have about 42% that have gone to careers at the national laboratories or other government agencies, and the rest of them are out there being talent, being people who are aware of the complex in the laboratories and who can be called upon if needed, and who we can engage with when we go to things like APS, DMP, or APS, DPP, or any of those types of things. So really proud of the work we've done over the last decades and look forward to continuing that. All right, so these are, I probably should have put this slide first because these are all my acronyms shown here. So these are the 6 programs that we have going, and I think I've referred to all of them. Maybe not Joint Program in High Energy Density Lab Plasmas, HEDLP. That is about an 8 to 12 million, depending on the year, program that supports centers and grants. We are actually looking at how we do more user support in terms of shot time, compute time, all of those types of things, and that's kind of ingrained in here. But it's trace amounts, also supporting some summer programs, graduate student travel, all of those type of things. But you can see kind of the impact across the country. 40 out of the 50 states. We're looking at how to get to the other 10. Fellows, grants, consortia, and centers, all covered with our 1%, right? So that's a great return. That's a phenomenal return on what we're investing in. And, you know, with the champions that we have both inside and outside of the building, we are looking to make sure that that stays vibrant, strong, and grows if possible. All right, so just drilling down a little bit into the fellowships, give everybody a chance to see if their organization's represented here. But we are so pleased with how SSGF is going, how LRGF is going already in its early years. And so this has been some great work by Sarah Nelson, by Terry Stone, by Krell, by all of the people both in Washington, in the organization, and our partners who have been extremely valuable. And you guys are kind of the proof, or you know, the fruit of all of that labor. And we look forward to continuing both of these fellowships going forward. And we look forward to any feedback. So we have this longitudinal survey coming out. And so I would encourage you guys to really give us the information we need so that we you know, do the best we can for yourselves and for those that come after you in the program. All right, so where do I think we are? What time do we have? How long do I have? All right. Oh, okay. Oh, we're good. All right, so where do I think we are? So this, I wish it was a color. Maybe I should have made it green and light green because this looks a little, where we're strong, without a doubt, is in the research and the training. Right now, I feel like those are our strongest areas, and we'll open the floor afterwards for university faculty and labs to kind of contradict that, but I really have a lot of confidence in the research we're doing all across the board, centers, grants, fellowships, you name it, in partnership with the laboratories and with one another. Where I feel like we could be doing better, innovation, right? And that's making sure that we are able to be more adventurous with the ideas, bring forth a lot more new ideas. It's a tough thing to do, right? Because you have to prove out that these things are feasible, that they're reasonable, that they should get the time, all of that type of thing. And then peer review. How are we capitalizing on the people that we have out in the community to really, you know, engage with us about our ideas and about the science? So those are areas that I think are green, but we need to start paying attention to, right? And then there are areas in terms of pipeline and inclusion where we really need to start paying attention to it, right? Definitely not red, but definitely not green, so I settled on yellow. And so I feel like this is a doable thing, especially if we do it between now and 2024. Right? If we start to look really closely at these things, I think we'll be in the green, no problem. So this is where we want to be in the next 5 or so years, what we call FinSip, right? So I think my brain glitches if I start to think anything past 5 years, so we're just going to leave it there. And I think that we can get green when it comes to innovation, when it comes to peer review, and that's by having a more integrated way of looking at these programs. I think the 10.1 shift is going to help with that. I think us engaging more with the labs about what their programs are. Each of the laboratories and plants have programs that they're doing. How are we coupling with them? How are we coupling with other organizations in, say, the Office of Science or National Science Foundation, right? So there's a lot there where we can really roll up our sleeves and say, how do we work as a system when it comes to innovation, when it comes to peer review? Who do we have? Who can we call? How can we set the stage and have the vehicles to make sure we have a really robust and innovative program? Pipeline and inclusion. So I think we all know that this is a long-term thing that we're going to have to get after, right? And so, you know, like I said, 5 years, it's not going to be solved, but we are going to have some ways to understand how to do it better. So we are going to have some best practices. We are going to get more integrated with other organizations that are also doing academic programs. And we are going to understand what tools we need, right? How do we need to change, say, the solicitation process. How do we need to change how inclusive some of these awards are when it comes to compute times and cycles? How do we engage with, say, a LaserNet or a ZNet? How do we do these things? So things are out there. We just need to make sure that we are building the interfaces and the connective tissue between all of those things. So again, how will this help us? Scientific risk mitigation. You guys are part of the scientific community, right? You're part of what we need when it comes to things that are of interest to NNSA, whether you're inside or outside. The science you're doing is science of interest. Workforce inclusion. I spoke to this earlier. Getting more institutions and organizations on board, integrated, and part of the discussion. Program responsiveness. So we love Congress. Congress loves us. So sometimes Congress gives us money that we don't really have a vehicle for how to use, right? We're gonna try and figure it out, right? We may have to say, okay, Sandia, can you help us with, how we distribute this money for this intent, all right? Office of Science, can you help us out with how we distribute this money for this intent? So we are working on those areas, but we want to improve our program responsiveness, and we want to always say yes. Anything you want to give us, we're happy to take. And then lastly, complex integration, right? So how do we, when we're doing these awards, integrate access to and time on experimental facilities and compute time? How do we work and leverage other vehicles, right? And then how do we integrate with the other labs, plants, and sites from the headquarters perspective? So this is just kind of a quick look at where we're going. So where we are, where we're going, and really, as you guys mature, whether you're inside or outside of the complex, was so happy to see the fellows, happy to see the NGFP fellows, as well as the laboratory fellows. And we want to do what we can to make sure that you know NNSA, whether you're inside or outside of the organization. So I will close with, hopefully this is a close because I'm building up as a close, some of the future direction. So we have right now academic programs, and we're all familiar with those areas. Where we want to grow, pipeline development. How do we do that, right? And so I think I've spoke to all of the elements of how we make sure that we are more of a presence within the scientific community, right? And we're increasing that pool of STEM talent. So I won't go over that more. And then distributed research laboratories. How do we do research in the environment and climate and world we're in today? And how do we build people up so they can eventually be within centers of excellence, right? How do they go from the individual at an institution to being part of a larger community that's really doing groundbreaking research? So that's what we want to build up in the future going forward. So, commitment from headquarters, from me, to increase the visibility, integration, and impact of academic R&D, to adapt the headquarters structure, and that's a little bit about what pipeline development and distributed research labs is supposed to do. Make sure that we are being responsive, make sure we're reading the tea leaves, and make sure we're making room, right, for the expansion when it wants to come to us, that we can receive that. And then assess AP focus areas. We have had low energy nuclear science, high energy density physics, computational science, modeling and simulation, material science for a long time. We'll have them, into the future. But are there other areas that we need to explore, right? Are we doing enough when it comes to machine learning, additive manufacturing, cyber? We need to think about these things. Are we doing enough when it comes to policy, right? So just really understanding where we need to go next, and then mechanisms for multi-year tracking, measuring, and evaluation. So those are some of the things that are kind of, key in my mind going forward. And when I get on the plane tomorrow, going back to DC, what I'll try to make sure I reinforce. Stephanie's gonna help me with that. All right. And so I'll leave you with this kind of call to action. I think I'm well within my hour, so we can do a good Q&A here. Part of the strategic vision that I hope you guys all go and see, quick read, but it gives you an insight into how the Undersecretary is looking at this, how the NNSA administrator is looking at this. This is unparalleled science, technology, and engineering capabilities, making sure that we foster and support those. Unrivaled workforce, that's you guys, right? Innovative spirit, again, and then commitment to delivering on our mission as efficiently and effectively as possible. So that's something where, you know, you use the scientific method. You have people who want to find solutions, who ask questions, right, who find gaps. So I really think that there is such a unique role for scientists in this environment. I definitely think we're in for a whole bunch of growth that we probably can't even define or foresee. And I think that NNSA right now is doing some great things, and you guys are a part of that, again, that engine for national security that's doing that. So with that, I will close, say thank you, and open the floor for any questions.